Tonight on the Daily Debrief, actor Kevin Spacey prepares to appear in court on a charge that he fondled a teenage boy. Plus, a Colorado man accused of killing his fiancée complains about government secrecy. And a 32-year-old woman tries to pass off as a teenager and now faces charges. That's straight ahead on the Daily Debrief for Friday, January 4th. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Debrief this Friday evening. Actor Kevin Spacey is scheduled to appear in court Monday morning on charges he groped an 18-year-old. Rachel Stockman reports on what we can expect.
Won him Academy Awards for The Usual Suspects in American Beauty and a Golden Globe for House of Cards, is now an accused criminal. The case unfolded when Spacey went to a crowded Nantucket restaurant and bar where an 18-year-old busboy was at work. Court records say the busboy lied to Spacey, saying he was 23 years old. After the busboy's shift ended at midnight, Spacey bought him a beer and another. Spacey said, "Let's get drunk." Spacey or his manager bought the busboy 4 or 5 beers and 4 or 5 glasses of whiskey, according to documents. The busboy says his memory is fuzzy, but he remembers a drunken sing-along with Spacey's arm around him. Spacey commented on the length of his own penis, according to court records. Later, the two went outside for a cigarette. Spacey asked the busboy to come home with him to meet Spacey's friends. The busboy says he became nervous. They went back inside where Spacey is accused of putting his hand on the busboy's thigh, unzipping his pants, and touching him sexually. It went on for about 3 minutes. The busboy took a Snapchat video of the incident and sent it to his girlfriend, then went to the bathroom, then told a woman Spacey was trying to, quote, rape him. She advised him to leave, so he did. The busboy told police he didn't know how to react in the moment because he feared getting in trouble. The summer 2016 incident became public in the fall of 2017, when former Boston TV news anchor Unruh announced the busboy is her son. She dug into the case herself and tried to round up witnesses. Police got involved a few weeks later. When prosecutors filed the charges, Spacey released a cryptic video in the character of Frank from House of Cards, which some believe to be a response.
But you wouldn't believe the worst without evidence, would you? You wouldn't rush to judgments without facts, would you? Did you?
Spacey is charged with indecent assault and battery on a person over 14 without consent. He could face 5 years in prison and could be forced to register as a sex offender if convicted. I'm Rachel Stockman for the Law&Crime Network.
Joining me tonight on the Daily Debrief are attorney Mike Koribanics and juvenile court judge Ashley Willcott. Good evening to you both.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
All right. And let's jump into this here. So, Ashley, what do you make of this whole Kevin Spacey situation? We've got this hearing on Monday. He didn't want to show up. The judge said, no, you have to show up. What do we expect?
So, first of all, I'm glad that he was not held to any different standard because of his fame and fortune. Most defendants, you have to go to arraignment. He has to go to arraignment, number one. Number two, I think it's going to be business as usual, very brief, arraignment, plead guilty or not guilty, get a copy of the charges, and that's what it's going to be.
Mike, what's your take on this case?
This is a very difficult case, I think, because it appears that you have a client, if you're the defense attorney, who slowly is becoming unhinged. I mean, that video, there's really no reason for it to claim I'm not going to show up for a court appearance. This is a very difficult client. I always say when you have a client with some sort of celebrity, you've got to make it very clear to them that you are an attorney. You're not a public relations man.
Well, the defense didn't want him to show up for the appearance. They said it would just attract more negative publicity for the case. This was a court filing, and the judge said, no, forget it. This makes no sense. You have to show up.
Well, I think that's where the defense is starting to make a mistake, is because they are drawing attention to things by making these filings that they know they're not going to win just to please their client. And I think they should reevaluate and just take it one step at a time and treat them like everybody else so they don't draw so much attention.
Ashley, back at you now. What is your take? I know that you read the court documents as they exist right now along with me this afternoon. in the newsroom there. So what's your take of the evidence here? We've got multiple people making statements to the police. How does it all unravel?
So to me, it all unravels in that you have a victim who says that this happened. He was 18 years old. He was intentionally touched by Spacey. He did not consent to that, and it was on his private, so it was indecent. So I think his statement alone arguably meets all the criteria set forth in the code section for the charge of indecent assault and battery.
And Mike, quickly, I know that you've got concerns about veracity of some of these statements. The purported victim here said he had, what, 4 or 5 beers and 4 or 5 shots. The
thing that concerns me even more than that is the fact that the victim here, the alleged victim, because he's entitled to his presumption of innocence, Spacey is the fact that he speaks about 3 minutes is a long amount of time. And to say that he was being touched during those 3 minutes and videotaped it and Snapchatted it is really stretching things. And I think this case, nobody should rush to judgment here, and really the presumption of innocence needs to stay put.
Mike Ashley will check in with both of you at the end of the broadcast here. An update now in the case of a Colorado man accused of killing his fiancée who disappeared back on Thanksgiving. Patrick Frazee was in court today. His actual preliminary hearing has been pushed back to February 19th. The defense today complained that they never before saw the charging documents in the case. The judge is keeping the arrest affidavit, which contains the details of the crime, sealed from the public, but the defense finally got it. Frazee's fiancée, Kelsey Barrett, is missing and presumed dead. Police think a woman in Idaho may have helped get rid of Barrett's phone. Today is a dark day in the case of a New Jersey man accused of stabbing his estranged wife more than 40 times as their son was said to have watched. The case is coming out of southern New Jersey, where defendant Jeremiah Monell faces a series of charges. They include first-degree murder over the death of victim Tara O'Shea Watson in December 2016. The maximum penalty for Monell is life without parole. Authorities have long said the couple's child, also named Jeremiah, witnessed the attack. In court yesterday, a police officer showed jurors the blood-stained blanket under which the victim's body was discovered by neighbors. Court was actually delayed yesterday because the defendant was 90 minutes late. The defendant claimed it was because his jailers were mistreating him. The judge said that if Monell wasn't on time in the future, he would simply move on and tell the jury to assume nothing about Monell's lack of presence in the courtroom. Let's step back now to the prosecution's opening statements.
A neighbor that lives a few houses down, Crystal Greer. Around that time, she heard a knock on her door. Standing there at the doorway is little Jeremiah and his sister, still in her footy pajamas. Tara was not with Jeremiah and Sarah. Tara wasn't on her way following behind them up the street. Tara was nowhere to be seen. So she asked Jeremiah, Jeremiah, where's your mom? Jeremiah looks at her and says, Mommy is dead. Daddy killed her. Imagine the shock and how stunned she was when she heard those words. She asks him again, this is not something to kid about. Where's your mom? And he gives the same response.
Her neighbors got together and went to the victim's house.
So Glenn, Crystal, and James get to the house, 9701 Raymond Drive. And upon going into the house, they discover the horror that had occurred. Tara wasn't just dead. She had been brutally and mercilessly murdered. They found that out when they go in. Tara's lying there on the floor. There's a blanket covering her. The corner of the blanket is pulled back. They see her face, spattered with blood. A gaping wound in her neck. State police are contacted. They respond out to the area and they begin their investigation. Part of that investigation was going around to some neighbors to see if anybody had heard anything, if anybody had seen anything. And they find a couple of people, Paige and Peter Osmond, who also live nearby. The night before, on the 18th, they were out walking their dogs, and they go by 7901 Raymond, and they hear the defendant and Tara in the midst of an argument.
The investigation unfolded from there, revealing physical evidence of the crime.
The state police also searched the house, and during their search of the house, they find numerous pieces of evidence. There's the carpet that's soaked with blood. There are some bins with blood splatter on them. There is a cardboard box saturated with blood. There are some other blood stains on numerous other pieces of other articles in the house. In the kitchen, behind the stove, they locate 2 knives. The knives had blood on them. The knives were collected as evidence. They also find a pair of jeans in a small area that's used as a bedroom, right next to the kitchen. Blood on the jeans.
Eventually, a detective spoke to little Jeremiah, the child who is said to have witnessed the attack. After a 2-week manhunt, police did catch the defendant.
During the course of the investigation, a detective speaks with little Jeremiah. And during the course of that interview, little Jeremiah tells the detective what he saw. He saw his father assaulting his mother, choking her. He saw his father stab his mother again and again, over and over. Members of the state police searched for the defendant. But for 2 weeks, they were unable to find him. Not until they received some information that he might be up in Folsom Borough over in Atlantic County. Troopers go out and they look for him in that area. On a trail in the woods, they find the defendant. He's placed under arrest at that time. And that's what brings us here. And I anticipate that the evidence in this case will show that Jeremiah Monell murdered Tara O'Shea. And that act was purposeful, was known, was calculated, planned, and depraved.
Back once again tonight are Judge Ashley Willcott and attorney Mike Koribanics. So, Judge, let me start with you. Victim's blood on the knife, defendant's palm print on the knife, defendant's DNA inside a pair of bloody jeans, the blood, of course, the victims. This is a pretty strong case for the prosecution. I
absolutely think it is. In addition to that, you have a 12-year-old who says, I saw my father stab my mother multiple times, Dad killed Mom. I think it sounds to me like something the prosecution is going to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. His defense says he didn't do it, so let's see.
Yeah, Mike, that's what I was going to ask you. This guy says someone else did it. Where's he going to go with that? How's he going to try to indicate that somebody else did it here?
I think that's something we're going to have to wait and see. I think it's a very strong case. And I think this prosecutor did an excellent opening. He was so organized, went through it, and was very, he's there for business.
He wasn't overly dramatic either. Sometimes when you've got facts this strong, you don't need to oversell your case.
I agree 100%. I think we picked up on the same thing. He's going to be all business, and he's going to present a strong case, and the defense is going to have a long trial ahead of him.
Agree. Still ahead tonight, folks, on the Daily Debrief. The defense says, as we were talking, that Jeremiah Monell did not kill his wife. We'll look at the defense tactics here. Also, this woman is 32 going on 15. Find out what one New York woman's explanation was after she was caught trespassing on a high school campus. That's after the break on the Daily Debrief. And welcome back, folks. We're talking about the Jeremiah Monell case out of New Jersey. Let's listen now to what the defense says during opening statements. Here, the defense gave what some attorneys would call a non-opening opening, which basically asked jurors to hold the state to its burden of proof.
The government just got up and painted you a picture of what they believe that witnesses will come and testify to. as each witness comes before you, ask yourself, who are they? What role do they play? Why are they testifying? And more importantly, not what they are saying to you, but what they aren't saying to you. When each person leaves the stand, are you left with concrete answers? Are you left with something that goes you closer to the answer of who killed Tara? Or are you left with more questions? Is your mind left wandering about, hey, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't add up. Yes, they told me this, but what about this? After the last state's witness testifies. And you were sitting there thinking and analyzing each of their testimony. You're going to be left with more questions than answers. All the pieces won't neatly fit in the puzzle and give you the picture that the government just painted for you.
The defense says Monell didn't do it, but offered no other explanation for what happened. Of course, the defense doesn't need an explanation. That's the prosecution's job. But the defense did make this kind of bizarre analogy. It started by asking jurors to demand answers, not just responses from witnesses.
And I know you're probably thinking, what's the difference between an answer and a response? And some of you said you had children. And sometimes you'll ask your kid, who left the cereal out? And that child responds to you with a whole lot of things rather than the answer to the question that was presented to them. So was it a response? Or is it just merely, or is it an answer?
Let's go back to the panel one more time for this discussion from the defense. Mike, let me start with you here. How do you think the defense did here? They said somebody else did it. They didn't give any other explanation beyond that, and then they sort of drifted into a burden of proof discussion.
Well, I always think that in a case like this where there seems to be overwhelming evidence, you want to make sure the jury tests each witness. It's always a tough call, and I can't say I disagree or agree with when you do that. Is it better to wait until your summation to then point it out? Because you may be making promises to the jury you can't keep, and that's always a problem.
I think the defense was careful not to do that. Actually, one thing we were talking about with regards to this is why there was no specific promise that the child would testify. Again, this is the child that is said to have witnessed this entire attack.
You know, you're right, Aaron, and so I assume the child has to testify. At least I can't think of any evidentiary way for a statement to come in without the child testifying. So I think we're going to hear from the child, and I think the defense alludes to it when she talks about the differences between answers and responses. To me, they're going to get into some of the suggestibility around questioning a child witness.
That could be the direction that this goes. It will be sad testimony, but it is critical testimony, especially with a constitutional right to cross-examine witnesses. In this case, the defendant getting the chance to cross-examine his own son. Let's move along now and listen to testimony from some of the first witnesses in this case. One of the first witnesses was this police officer who had to describe finding the victim at the crime scene.
To my recollection, I did observe bloodstains on the blanket as well. It was in place over top of the body.
What did you do in regards to the blanket itself?
Removed the blanket to ensure that it wasn't, in fact, a human being underneath the blanket, and then placed it back. Left it in place, I should say, where it was prior to being moved or collected later on.
The individual that you observed that was under the blanket, what, if anything, did you observe and note about that person's condition?
I observed multiple bloodstains on various regions of her body and multiple lacerating stab wounds to the neck, chest area.
Testimony in the Monell case resumes on Tuesday. Now to Anthony Velez with a look at other incidents making headlines tonight.
Here are today's top crime stories trending on Law&Crime.com and across the country. A mother in Colorado is under arrest after her child was found dead in a storage unit. 35-year-old Alicia Pankey turned herself into authorities after her son, 7-year-old Caden McWilliams, was found dead inside of a locked storage unit in Denver. Authorities believe Caden was killed at the storage facility in May and found his body after reportedly receiving a tip. Pankey is being held on $250,000 bond and is scheduled to appear in court on January 9th. A woman in New York is under arrest after she reportedly pretended to be a teenager to enroll in high school. 32-year-old Michael Ann Goodrich, who already has a high school diploma, reportedly told school administrators in Cairo she was a 15-year-old homeless teen named Riley Madison and was allowed to ride a bus to and from school for one day. Administrators eventually became suspicious of Goodrich and called police. She now faces charges of offering a false instrument for filing, falsifying business records, and criminal trespassing. Newly released documents show a woman arrested in Arizona for allegedly stalking and harassing a man she met on a dating website reportedly sent over 159,000 messages to the man in the 10 months following their one and only date. 31-year-old Jacqueline Claire Aids is accused of breaking into the unidentified victim's home and sending many threatening text messages. Aids was initially arrested for trespassing on April 8th when she was discovered in the victim's home by police with a large butcher knife in the passenger seat of her car. Aids now faces a charge of stalking and criminal trespassing. Those were today's top crime stories. I'm Anthony Velez for the Daily Debrief.
Okay, Juvenile Court Judge Ashley Willcott is still with us tonight. So, Ashley, I got to ask you, if somebody is 32 and going on 15, do they wind up in your courtroom or do they not qualify for juvenile court?
All I know is something is wrong. And if they did end up in juvenile court, I would certainly bind that over to adult court because there is nothing good about that scenario in my mind.
Okay, so Mike, you're the defense attorney, former prosecutor, of course, but current criminal defense attorney. What's the defense? We've got false instruments, false records, and trespassing. Are they going too hard on this individual?
It's mind-boggling. I really couldn't even tell you. I don't know why somebody would ever want to go back to high school.
Ashley Willcott, ready for a do-over? Do you want to go back to high school?
No, there's no way I'd go back to high school, nor should a 32-year-old have any reason to go back to a high school.
Okay, so Mike, I would assume that you're going to go maybe some kind of mental check, telling prosecutors, hey, look, you're hitting this person way too hard. What's the real harm here? I mean, or is there something more nasty going on?
First thing I would do is actually send to my own mental health expert and have her evaluated to see where this is going.
We will have to wait and see. Mike Koribanics, appreciate you joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And, of course, Judge Ashley Willcott, we appreciate you seeing you as well here on The Debrief.
Thanks, Aaron.
We will be back live with more coverage starting Monday, including that Kevin Spacey hearing that we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast. That is at 11 a.m. Our live coverage starts at 9 a.m. here on Law and Crime. We'll see you on Monday, folks.